Daniel, I wanted to ask about the beginning of the film. Mabel's not nonverbal in the intro, but she only says a few lines. Can you speak to that characterization? Because I couldn't think of another Pixar protagonist that was quite like that, and it sets a unique tone for the film and such a contrast to the Spitfire that she becomes.
Funny.
Yeah, I don't know that I guess it just felt intuitively correct, you know? I mean, especially she's gonna become such a vocal character later, but maybe the instinct to not have her talk so much, some of it is also because we're clearly setting her up to be an outsider, somebody who doesn't connect with people, is kind of alone in the fight. You know, she's not one of the kids that will join everybody and, you know, bully this turtle. She's doing the opposite, you know. So I think that there's a part of her that is just very different, and I think maybe we were just instinctually trying to create some contrast. But I think also when she's with her grandmother, she's a lot is pent up in her. You know, there's a lot of emotion that is being kind of kept inside, and she doesn't know what to do with it. And I do think it's only when she meets her grandma that she finds some release and connection. And so I think for those reasons, you know, it felt right that she doesn't have much to say and is very much more internal and a lot more kind of, you know, bundled up, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, those scenes with Mabel and her grandmother are really something special. And Nicole, your past Pixar work has, been a lot on the sequels, like Incredibles 2. What are the challenges that come with launching an original idea like Hoppers and getting an audience to really invest in that?
Well, I mean, it's a challenge to just create a whole new world with a whole new group of characters and just figure out what it is that we're making. You don't know where it's all going to end up as you're planning, in terms of like planning a budget and a schedule. But we had a really strong premise to begin with, and we had a strong main character and strong general theme that we were working with. And I think it was really just about following Daniel's lead in terms of his instincts. He's very funny. He knows and makes decisions very quickly as a director. And I think that gave me a lot of confidence that if we followed his lead, we'd be able to find our way through what ended up being an enormous movie. We also had time, was a friend of ours in that we had some time to figure out what was important for the storytelling and allowed us to build this really big world with all these characters. And just to say, it wasn't just, a bunch of characters. It was characters that had completely different character rigs. So you have a bear, you have deer, you have beavers, you have birds, frogs. I mean, they all had different kind of character rigs, skeletons to animate. And we needed time for the animators to figure that out. I would say it's really hard and scary and ultimately incredibly gratifying to create a new world.
Yeah, I'm glad it's gratifying for your part because it was such a refreshing film for the viewers to see this year as well. And
Thank
Daniel, one of my favorite elements of Hoppers is the difference between the animal world and how we view them. They're much more expressive when we get to see their view. What was the challenges of pulling off that idea and getting these, multiple versions of these characters? It's very fun to see the differences.
Yeah, as you say it, the multiple versions of the animals or of the characters, that is the problem. You know, it's basically you're asking the team to create double assets, you know, and I think it's a big ask. You know, every model is accounted for because they all take a long time to make, and you know, every different body type, as Nicole has said, is an extreme amount of work. And so now we're asking, hey, for every animal, can you do two versions? Like, it's not as simple as like just popping a black eye on them, because the facial construction is done in such a way that it requires work to make that integrate that black eye version.
And just to
So
say that when you first asked for it, they went, nope,
yeah, yeah, it was a hard no initially.
no, no, we can't do that. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So
I think we found the trick eventually of like how to easily embed the black eye, the dot eye, and you know I think it's the modelers and the technical teams had to just figure out like how to aesthetically do it in the way that wasn't too much work, but it was a big ask. And I think that was the challenge. But I think we all held hands going like, we understand why it's important to do this. We understand the joke and the reason why emotionally it'll matter. So I think it was just about working with the team and figure out how do we do it. And obviously Nicole is the central to that because how do we afford it?
Well, I'm glad you guys figured it out. And Nicole, I wanted to ask you about John Hamm. He's so good at playing smug, but he's also inherently likable. How was it using that to Mayor Jerry? Because you don't want people to really hate that character. I feel like we're always kind of rooting for him to change his ways. So how was it making that antagonist, still likable and have that layer?
Well, I mean, John Hamm was always the guy. He was who we would hope to get, and we got him, luckily. It was somebody who could be kind of smarmy, but in a way that is kind of funny and likable. And John just nailed that. Mayor Jerry was an interesting journey. I think it took a while before we got to the place where we really redeemed him at the end. Initially, he was just kind of a bad guy, and it became clear that for the story that we were telling, we needed him to kind of be humanized and to understand what was motivating him and why he did what he did. And it ultimately makes the story so strong. And John Hamm is the one who can pull that off. He can go from smarmy to at the end, like kind of, bring some tears to your eye. Like the guy is like, okay, I've made some mistakes. Let's work together. And I think it's what makes the story strong.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And Daniel, you had left Pixar before, and Hoppers was essentially the culmination of your return. You really bet on yourself, and it paid off. How cathartic was it to have Hoppers release and be embraced both by audiences, but and also critics after all these years of work?
Yeah, man, it's a relief. Thank God. I'll be honest, like the more I think about this game we play of working 6 years on a movie and then hoping that it hits, is like such a crazy gamble. And I don't know how the studio has done it 30 times. My God. But that's just the way it is, and the best thing you could do is just work with the studio and do the best you can to put out the best thing you can. And you just have to, a lot of it's luck. You just hope that, it hits at the right time and that people want it at that time and it resonates. But it's a big relief. I can't describe to you the sort of anticipation and tension you feel as the movie is nearing release. It's just nerve-wracking, but yeah,
I
thankfully.
Yeah.
I wanted to add to like that we have hundreds of people who work on our team and a lot of young people, a lot of people who are relatively new to the studio, and their feedback is key to us. Like they're the ones who can say, this feels fresh, this is funny, this is not at a time when, it's easy to fall into the tropes of old Pixar. They were the ones who were like, no, you really have to change this and you have to, or being behind Daniel when he was doing some crazy stuff, like having, a shark carried by seagulls, and have some people in the studio go, I don't know, that's too crazy, and have them go, yes, yes, we have to do that.
I love that everybody's voice is valued. And Nicole, as far as like Pixar pacing goes, like this is very laugh a minute, and is a faster paced film than some of the older films. But there's also so many deeper themes at play with the environment and how we cohabitate with animals. How was it balancing that humor, but also have those overall themes that really register and make the film stay with fans, far after the credits roll?
Well, I mean, I think humor was the first thing that we were putting forward. We wanted to make a film that was entertaining, but we also wanted to have something that, beneath all of that had some meaning. We weren't telling anybody, how to think about these things. What we were recognizing is there's stuff going on in the world right now about, the way people interact with one another, about the environment, and that's what good storytelling is. It's plugging into the zeitgeist. It's plugging into like what are people feeling in the world without necessarily taking a side. It's just like plugging into something that is got a deep emotional undercurrent. And I think that was the thing we were always balancing. We weren't trying to tell anybody how to think about these things. We were just recognizing this is the world we all live in, people, and seeing what rose to the top. And that's the thing where having a whole studio of people, telling us what they think, giving us notes, people who come from all different places really helped.
Daniel, I have to ask, how did you get Meryl Streep for this role? It's so hilarious and shocking what happens to her. What was your pitch like?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that I would use Meryl as a kind of name, just not thinking that we would get her, but just trying to help people understand this is how powerful she is. It's like Meryl Streep, but like, never thinking that we would actually, be able to cast her. But then when it came time to cast, we were like, maybe we just ask, see what happens. And we got very fortunate that we actually got to do a Zoom call with her to just kind of show her what the project was and just see would she want to do it. And I would say within a couple minutes of us starting to pitch the movie to her, you could tell like, oh, I think she likes it. She was laughing a lot, understood the tone. I think the deal breaker I thought was going to be like, well, Meryl, I just have to tell you, you're not going to survive past your first scene. And I was like, I thought I was willing to just let that be the deal breaker because, it's like you're not going to be in it very long. But she got the joke, she got it, and that is what's going to be funny about it is we're not just, killing, the insect queen isn't just getting, squished. Meryl Streep is getting squished, and it says something. It makes you feel something like, oh my God, like I thought she was going to be in the movie for more. So I think it just plays towards everything I'd hoped for that role. And Meryl was just down for the joke, and she's playful. When we got in the booth with her, she was just so fun and easy, light. She experimented, and that really weird voice she puts on, that was all her. I didn't have to ask her for it. She came in with it. And it takes comedy chops to be able to be consistent with a voice like that and make it funny. So she's got it. She's good. She knows what she's doing. Yeah.
Here's the quote: Meryl Streep, she's good. So
Yeah.
very astute observation there. Um, Nicole, I really cracked up that the city was called Beaverton because one of my best friends lives in Beaverton, Oregon.
Oh,
And
really?
they really embraced the film. And I know you guys did some celebrations there upon release. How cool is that, having that city, real city embrace it as well?
Oh, well, I have to say my son was living there while we were making the film too. So yeah, it was really cool and obvious. I mean, we never intended for this to take place in Beaverton, Oregon. It was just obviously it had to be Beaverton because beavers had lived there. So it was incredibly cool. And yes, of course, Beaverton, Oregon embracing it. And also, I think a bunch of universities that have beavers as their mascots also did stuff. People from Canada are really digging this movie because of beavers. The whole state of Oregon, I think, is also like into beavers. So yeah, it's been really cool. I mean, it's like beavers are having their moment, and Beaverton is just a part of that.
I love it. And Daniel, my last question. I know you can't give anything away, but have you been ideating on any ideas for a sequel, or are there any seeds that you would like to explore if possible?
Well, I just got back from vacation. I've been off since the movie came out, so I'm just coming back now. All I can say is there's a lot of desire for it to happen, and there's a lot of from everybody, and we will, we'll see what happens. And Pixar is notorious; they will not make anything if there's no story there. They will scrutinize the hell out of it. So, we'll just see what happens and go from there. We definitely cut a lot of stuff out of the movie, because this movie was never short of ideas. So there's definitely a lot of material we could pull from for the sequel, if we have.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time and congrats on the film. It's really wonderful.